Hello all, and welcome to the world of Hyperloop. First of all, thank you, Jochen, for inviting me to be part of this session, but also great to meet all the rest of the participants of this event. My name is Tim. I'm one of the 4 founders of HART. In the next 5 minutes, I will elaborate a bit more on Hyperloop and also how we think how the stimulus package should be spent. But first, let me take you through our vision, because in the end, we envision a world where distance doesn't matter, and you can basically go, live, and work wherever you want, whenever you want. So how does this world look like? Well, let's take 2050, for example. Then we travel over a whole continent with the same ease as that we are traveling now in a city with a metro, for example. So what does that mean? Let's say Jochen and I now decide to meet up in Rotterdam for a nice dinner. Jochen will be here in almost 1 hour. We have a very nice dinner together, and he's at his home place in Berlin again and sleeping in his own bed. So that's what we can realize. But furthermore also that the whole continental supply chain is connected within several hours. So that means that it's now already the end of the afternoon. Let's say you've ordered a package from a faraway country. Before you go to bed, the package will be at the front of your door. So that's the world that we are realizing. But the big question is, why do we need this world? Well, that's because the demand for passenger and cargo transport is tripling towards 2050. And to accommodate for this growing demand, almost 70,000 billion of euros need to be invested in infrastructure in order that we can accommodate this demand. Now, of course, we can only invest this once, so preferably we do that in a future-proof infrastructure, which is, in our point of view, efficient in costs, but also efficient in energy, and last but not least, efficient in the implementation. And all of these while being competitive in speed and capacity. Now, this is exactly what the Hyperloop is. It's the cleanest and the greenest way of high-speed transportation. It can travel as fast as an airplane, and the infrastructure implementation costs are less of that of high-speed rail. And it works as follows. The vehicles are traveling through a tube in which there's almost no air, and since there's no air, there is no air resistance, and these high speeds can be achieved without using very limited energy. Secondly, the vehicles are being levitated and propelled magnetically, so never there is any mechanical friction, so therefore the operational costs are very low. And last but not least, the infrastructure can easily be implemented above the ground, but also under the ground. Above the ground next to existing roads or railways, and under the ground in very small tunnels, much smaller than you would need for trains or cars. And therefore the implementation costs are much lower compared to the current infrastructure requirements. Now, our vision is in the end to realize complete Hyperloop networks. It's kind of a similar vision as what people had probably when they were inventing rail transport. And that turned out quite well. There is almost 1 million kilometers of rail worldwide. And if you look to what is then the potential for Hyperloop, this is really on the strategic corridors. And according to the European Union, this is 25% of the European rail network. So if you would plot that on the complete rail network, that means that around 250,000 kilometers of Hyperloop fits these strategic corridors. Now, to realize this, around 7.5 trillion euro of investments is required. You think, well, this is a huge amount, and it definitely is. But compared to the bigger picture of the almost 70 trillion that's required to invest in the upcoming growth for transportation, it's a bit more than 10% towards 2050. So for basically a small fraction of the total amount that already needs to be invested, the whole Hyperloop network can be realized. But of course, governments are not going to invest if there is no solid business case behind these projects. To prove that, we've partnered up with the Amsterdam Airport Schiphol to see Hyperloop as a sustainable alternative for the polluting air flights. And in this study, we connected Amsterdam to Berlin, Frankfurt, Paris, London, and the intermediate cities. And by just taking over the aviation market, this network turns already out to have a profitable business case. And of course, there are also more people traveling by train and car through these cities, so that only enhances the potential. Now then, governments are not going to decide to invest in these projects if they don't know if the technology is working. So that's also where we started with. And for that, we have realized Europe's first full-scale Hyperloop test facility, at which we can already prove every crucial Hyperloop technology, such as the magnetic levitation, the magnetic propulsion, even stabilization and lane switching. We can already prove here. And here we can see us as the founders of ART, as the sort of the boy band in front of our tube. But the big question is, how do we now get towards this hyper-connected world that we envision? What are the next steps to take? Well, the next steps are that we are going to prove all of our technologies for cargo transport, and then demonstrate it in a commercial line for cargo transport. And that's because we see cargo as the first market for Hyperloop, because it's much less prone to accidents, it has less safety hurdles, less regulatory restrictions. Plus we can also give the proof of it and sort of lower the bar for governments to also invest in passenger scale routes. In the meantime of the commercial cargo route, another passenger scale test facility will be realized to prove all of the technologies on passenger scale. And then a commercial passenger scale Hyperloop route can be realized. Now, as you can see, our big next step is to prove all the technologies for cargo. And that's what we will do in the European Hyperloop Center, hosted in the Dutch province of Groningen. That center will prove the technical feasibility of cargo loop in preparation for a first cargo loop route. Plus, it will also test the required passenger scale systems at a scale. And up to now, since we've started, we've raised around 10 million euros to come to the point where we are now. And to realize our next step, we're also raising our next investment round, where we already know there's a lot of interest from great investors. But also, if you are interested to be part of our adventure and help realize this next step together with us, then also please let me know after this conference. And if this European Hyperloop Center is realized, then we can start with the implementation of the first commercial cargo route. And that's then the initial step towards this complete network. And then, of course, the question like, how do we see the European stimulus package being spent? Well, the package is around 750 billion. Let's say we only take 0.1% of this package, and that's around 750 million. That's already enough to prove the initial cargo pilot route. And this is the first step towards eventually realizing this interconnected, sustainable continent. Also to be completely emission-free in 2050 by taking over all the short-haul flights. So that's our vision, and that's about Hyperloop. Thanks a lot for listening, and looking forward to the next part of the conference. Thank you.